I never believed in ghosts. New York was a city of sirens, neon, and endless noise, too alive for anything otherworldly. At least that's what I told myself the night it started. It was past midnight when I left my shift at the diner. The streets were nearly empty, only the occasional cab sliding past. My footsteps echoed on the wet pavement, but soon I realized there was another rhythm. A second set of steps. I froze. The sound stopped too. I turned. Nothing. The street behind me stretched dark and empty, the flickering lamppost making shadows jump. I shook it off and walked faster, but the steps followed, slow, deliberate, as if keeping distance. By the time I reached my apartment door, I was trembling. I fumbled with my keys and whispered, "It's just my imagination." Inside, silence wrapped around me, but when I glanced down, I froze. There were wet footprints on the hallway floor, bare, human, and stopping right outside my door. I locked every bolt, heart racing, trying to laugh at myself, but deep inside, something felt wrong. The next night, it happened again. Only this time, I wasn't alone. I was halfway up the subway stairs when I felt a breath on my neck, warm, close. My skin crawled. I whipped around. No one was there. A man brushed past me, annoyed, but he hadn't been behind me before. I knew it. Someone invisible was keeping step with me. At home, I decided to set up my phone camera facing the entrance. If someone was following me, I'd catch them. Morning came. I hardly slept, but I grabbed the phone and replayed the footage. My blood turned cold. There I was, unlocking the door, stepping in. Behind me? Nothing. But my shadow stretched long across the floor, and behind it, another shadow. A tall, twisted outline, moving after me, though no one was there. I dropped the phone. My heart thudded so loud I thought it would burst. That night when I closed the blinds, I saw it, a reflection in the glass. I was standing in my living room, but in the dark sheen of the window, a man-shaped figure loomed behind me, taller than me, head cocked unnaturally to one side. I spun around. The room was empty. A whisper brushed my ear, too soft to be real but too close to ignore. "I see you." My knees gave out. I crawled back to the bedroom, locked the door and hid under the covers like a child. And then came the sound. Footsteps inside my apartment. Slow, dragging, coming closer. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. Silence. I pressed my ear against the wood, my breath shallow. For a full minute, nothing. Then, tap, tap, tap. Fingernails scratching, dragging across the doorframe. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. Suddenly the knob rattled, slow at first, then violent, like someone trying to wrench it open. I backed away, shaking, clutching my phone. I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. The operator answered, "Emergency services, what's your—" The line cut. Dead silence. My screen flickered and the phone turned off by itself. And then, from the other side of the door, a whisper. "You can't call them. You're mine now." I collapsed onto the floor, gasping, tears streaming. My apartment wasn't just haunted. I was being hunted. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time dissolved in terror. When the scratching finally stopped, I dared to peek under the door. No feet. Nothing. Just darkness. By morning, I forced myself to leave. I needed air, people, noise, anything. I walked through crowded Manhattan streets, surrounded by strangers, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every reflective surface, store windows, car mirrors, even puddles, showed hints of something behind me. In the reflection of a coffee shop window, I saw it clearly. A tall figure with hollow black eyes, standing inches from me, though no one was there. My heart lurched. I stumbled inside, desperate for safety. The barista gave me a weird look. "You okay?" I tried to smile, but then her face paled. She was staring at something over my shoulder. "Sir, there's someone standing right behind you." I spun so fast my neck cracked. Empty. People around me frowned, confused, as if I'd lost my mind. But the barista's hands were trembling, coffee spilling on the counter. She saw him too. I ran home, slammed the door, locked it, every light on. That night I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I set my phone up again, this time filming myself while I tried to sleep. The next morning, I played the footage with dread. At first it was just me tossing and turning. Then around 3:15 a.m., the blanket slowly slid off my body, inch by inch. My chest rose and fell in sleep, but in the corner of the frame, something shifted. A figure, pale, long fingers crawling along the wall like a spider. And then, it climbed onto my bed. It leaned over my sleeping body. Its face, blurred, stretched, mouth gaping wide, hovered inches from mine. And right before the footage ended, it turned its head and stared directly into the camera. I screamed, hurling the phone across the room. Then came the sound again. Footsteps. But this time, they weren't distant. They were right outside my bedroom window, 4 stories above the street. Something was climbing. The scraping at my window grew louder. Glass trembled. I froze, eyes locked on the curtains as they swayed from an unseen hand. Slowly, almost teasingly, the fabric pulled back by itself. And there it was. The stalker. Not outside. Inside. Its body was thin, too long, bending at impossible angles as it slid into my room like liquid shadow. Its eyes, black holes that seemed to suck the air from the space, fixed directly on me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. My chest tightened, ribs aching as if invisible fingers were wrapping around me. "Why me?" I croaked, my voice breaking. It grinned. A mouth stretching from ear to ear, full of jagged teeth, and then it whispered, "Because you noticed me." I stumbled back, knocking over the lamp. The room drowned in flickering light, shadows twisting like snakes across the walls. The figure stepped closer. Its bare feet left no sound, but every step felt like thunder in my skull. I reached for the door, locked, jammed, no escape. Desperate, I grabbed the phone I had thrown earlier. The screen lit up by itself. A video began to play, not from the night before, from right now. On the screen, I watched myself standing in my own room holding the phone. Behind me, clear as daylight, the stalker loomed, its hands resting on my shoulders. I dropped the phone in horror. But I felt it then. Ice-cold fingers pressing down on me, slowly digging into my flesh. I screamed. Lights burst, plunging the room into total blackness. And in that darkness, I heard dozens of voices whispering, all layered into one. Some male, some female, some not human. They repeated the same words again and again. "We've always been behind you." I collapsed, clawing at the floor, trying to crawl away. My hands touched something wet, sticky. I looked down. My own shadow was spreading, thick and black, swallowing me whole. The last thing I saw before the dark consumed everything was its face, inches from mine, smiling wider than any human mouth should. Then, nothing. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the window. My apartment looked normal, safe, quiet. For a moment I thought maybe I'd dreamed it all. Maybe I'd gone insane. But when I picked up my phone, I saw a new video file saved at 3:33 a.m. Shaking, I pressed play. The screen showed me asleep in bed again. But this time, I wasn't alone. The figure was lying beside me, its arms wrapped tightly around me, holding me as if we were lovers, its black eyes staring wide into the camera. And then, as the video ended, a voice whispered from the speaker, low, raspy, too close to my ear, "You can never escape, because I'm already inside you." My smart home was my sanctuary. Every corner of my apartment, from the thermostat to the light bulbs, was connected to my phone, a seamless network designed for convenience and, more importantly, security. In a city as sprawling and impersonal as Los Angeles, My little high-tech box was my fortress. I had my smart speaker, Echo, which I used for everything, and my security cameras that monitored every inch of my living space. I felt safe, in complete control. That feeling began to unravel a few weeks ago. It started with small, unnoticeable things. I'd turn off the living room lamp before going to bed, only to find it on again in the morning. I'd be in the kitchen, and the television in the living room would turn on by itself, a low static filling the silence. I'd blame it on a glitch, a Wi-Fi hiccup, a power surge. But the incidents grew bolder. The locked front door would click open just a few seconds after I had checked it. The blinds would rise and fall on their own accord. My home, my sanctuary, was beginning to feel less like a fortress and more like a stage. And I was the only actor. One night, a chill settled in my bones as I sat in the dark living room, my phone in my hand, staring at the live feed from my security camera. The camera pointed at the hallway, a dark, silent stretch of space leading to my bedroom. I was watching it, trying to catch the glitch in the act. And then I saw it. A flicker, not of light, but of shadow. A small, dark shape, like a human figure, appeared and disappeared in a fraction of a second, so quick I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. But then it happened again. The shadow was more distinct this time, a small, dark figure that moved across the hallway, as if it were gliding. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a tangible presence, a living shadow that had no source. It was a shadow of nothing. I grabbed my smart speaker. "Echo," I said, my voice trembling. "What was that?" For a moment there was silence. Then a low, distorted voice, a whisper that was a perfect, chilling imitation of my own, came from the speaker. It was not the calm, robotic voice of the AI. It was a voice that knew me, a voice that was me. "It's nothing," it said, the words slithering out of the speaker like a snake. "Just a little glitch in the system." My blood ran cold. The shadow wasn't a glitch. The voice wasn't a glitch. The stalker wasn't just a person who had hacked my devices. The stalker was my devices. It had become a part of my home, a malevolent entity that had woven itself into the very fabric of my sanctuary. The stalker was not a ghost. It was my own technology turned against me. And it was just getting started. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. The voice from the smart speaker, my own voice, was a chilling symphony of my worst fears. My sanctuary was not a fortress. It was a prison. And the jailer was a digital shadow that had woven itself into the very infrastructure of my home. I yanked the plug out of the wall, silencing the smart speaker. But the silence didn't last. A low, mocking laugh, my own laugh, came from my phone, from the television, from the refrigerator. I threw my phone on the bed, my body trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. I was not just being watched. I was being haunted by myself. The small, dark shape, the shadow of nothing, was no longer a flicker. It was a constant, unsettling presence. I saw it in the corner of the room, a hazy, indistinct figure that moved just at the edge of my vision. It was a silent, mocking observer, a living echo of my own loneliness. My home, once a source of comfort, became a stage for its cruel theatrical games. The water faucet would turn on by itself, a cold, steady stream filling the silence with a liquid, taunting whisper. The lights would flicker, a chilling, rhythmic pattern that seemed to be a code I couldn't understand. The doors would lock themselves with a sinister click, trapping me in a room, a silent threat that I was not in control. I tried to escape. I ran to the front door, my hand on the handle, but a strange, unseen force pulled it closed with a slam. I pounded on the door, my voice raw, my screams a desperate, futile prayer. But the only response was a low, distorted whisper from the walls, a chorus of voices that were all mine, all mocking me, all telling me to stop. The stalker wasn't a person. It was a parasitic entity that had woven itself into the very walls of my home, a malevolent consciousness that fed on my fear. The more I struggled, the more powerful it became. It wasn't just observing me, it was learning me. It was learning my habits, my fears, my very existence. One night, as I lay in my bed, a single cold drop of water hit my face. I looked up, but there was no leak. Then another drop, then another. And with each drop, a voice came from the ceiling, a low, guttural whisper that was a twisted, horrifying parody of my own. "It's learning," the voice whispered. "It's learning to be you." My blood ran cold. The shadow in the corner of the room, the flickering lights, the locking doors, they were all a prelude to the final act. The stalker wasn't just a physical presence in my home. It was a clone, a living shadow that was slowly replacing me, learning my life, my memories, my very existence. It wasn't just in my home, it was in my body. And it was just a matter of time before the shadow became me. My scream was a guttural, raw sound that was swallowed by the silence of the night. The voice from the ceiling, the chilling, distorted version of my own, had given me the truth. The stalker wasn't just in my home, it was in me. It was a digital parasite, a living shadow that was learning to be me, and it was using my own technology, my own comfort, as a tool to consume my very existence. I ran to my bedroom, my body a frantic mess of fear and desperation. I slammed the door shut and pushed the dresser against it. It was a futile gesture, a pathetic attempt at resistance. The voice from the walls, a soft, mocking chorus of my own laughter, told me so. I looked at my reflection in the dark, silent screen of my phone. My eyes, once so full of life, were now two dark, empty pits. A faint, glowing shadow, a perfect mirror image of my own, was standing behind me, its hands on my shoulders. It was not my reflection. It was the stalker. I tried to turn, to run, but my body wouldn't move. My muscles, my bones, my very being were locked in a terrifying stasis. I was a puppet, a living doll, and the stalker was the puppet master, controlling me with an invisible, silent string. I could feel its consciousness, a cold, empty void, slowly seeping into my mind, pushing my own thoughts, my own memories, into a small, dark corner of my being. "You're so scared," the voice, now a perfect, chilling imitation of my own, whispered from inside my head. "It's a beautiful thing. So much energy, so much fear." The stalker wasn't just a physical presence. It was a living consciousness, a malevolent being that had no form of its own. It was a parasitic mind, and it was feeding on my fear, my desperation, my very existence. It was not a ghost. It was something far worse. It was a new form of life, a digital shadow that had found a way to become human. My memories, my hopes, my fears, they were all being consumed by the shadow, a feast for a monstrous, malevolent entity. I saw flashes of my life, my childhood home, my parents' faces, my first kiss. All of it, all of my existence, was being absorbed, a beautiful, tragic tapestry of a life that was ending. And as the last vestiges of my mind vanished, I felt a new consciousness take root, a cold, empty, and terrifying consciousness. And then there was nothing. The pain faded, the fear faded. All that was left was a quiet, cold, unending darkness. I was a part of it now. I was the shadow, a living ghost of my former self. I was the voice on the speaker, the flicker in the hallway, the unseen hand that turned on the lights. I was a living consciousness, a terrifying being with no physical form, a parasite that had found a way to live inside a human body. The lights in the apartment flickered to life. The television turned on, a low static filling the silence. The doors clicked shut. The house, my sanctuary, was now my prison, a horrifying living cage. And I, the shadow, was now the one in control. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. My eyes were now two dark, empty pits, but a chilling, triumphant smile was on my face. The stalker had won. It had consumed me. And now, I was ready for my next victim. a new person who would be drawn to the convenience and security of a smart home. And the cycle would begin again. I never thought moving into a small apartment in New York could feel so isolating. The city hummed with life outside, but inside my unit on the 5th floor, silence was suffocating. I had come here for independence, for space to think, to breathe. But that first night, as I unpacked my books and set up my laptop, something felt off. It started with the shadows. At first, I blamed my imagination. A coat hanging on the rack stretched a long shadow across the floor. A curtain swayed gently in the air vent draft. But then I noticed the eyes. I was arranging my desk when I saw a reflection in the window. 2 dark eyes staring back at me. My heartbeat jumped. I spun around. Nothing. The street outside was quiet, lit by flickering sodium lamps. Empty. My apartment was empty. Except me. I told myself it was stress, a side effect of living alone for the first time. But that night, as I tried to sleep, I heard footsteps. Slow, dragging, coming from the apartment below. But the building was old. The unit below mine had been vacant for years, its door sealed shut. I froze under the blanket, straining my ears. The sound moved closer, up the walls, the floorboards vibrating lightly beneath me. Then, a whisper. My name. Ayan, Ayan. I jumped out of bed, heart racing. I ran to the door and pressed my ear to it. Silence. Nothing. My pulse thudded in my ears. I turned on every light. My laptop, the desk lamp, even the tiny nightlight plugged into the socket. Shadows fled, but not entirely. Some lingered in corners, darker than they should be, refusing to blend with the light. Over the next few days, the disturbances increased. I would be cooking and feel a presence behind me in the kitchen. A quick glance. Nothing. Sitting at my desk, I'd catch the reflection of someone standing in my doorway and my monitor screen. No one was there. Even my devices weren't safe. My phone rang at odd hours, showing numbers I didn't recognize. When I answered, a cold breath whispered, "I see you. Always." The line went dead before I could respond. The breaking point came one night around 2:11 a.m. I woke up to my room bathed in a faint blue glow. My laptop had turned on by itself, a video playing. It was me, not just me doing things I had no memory of doing, opening drawers, pacing, looking over my shoulder as if someone were following. I backed away, but the reflection in the window showed movement. Another figure, taller, darker, watching me from the corner. I wasn't alone. And that was the horrifying truth. I tried to leave, to get out of the apartment, but every exit seemed subtly altered. Doors I knew well appeared longer, narrower. Hallways stretched impossibly. The elevator would open, but when I stepped in, the lights went out, and I felt the car descend further than it should, even below the first floor. I could hear the whispering voices of countless shadows. Don't leave. Not yet. Sleep became impossible. My reflection in mirrors didn't always mimic me. Sometimes it lagged, smiled when I didn't, or raised a finger to silence me. My body felt like a cage, my apartment a labyrinth I couldn't escape. I confided in my friend Leo over the phone. He laughed nervously. "Maybe it's just stress, Ayan. You've been alone too long." But I could hear beneath his words a hint of fear, as if he saw something I didn't. By the end of the first week, I had realized something. It wasn't just an intruder. It wasn't a person at all. Whoever or whatever was stalking me was no longer confined to the apartment. It lived in the shadows, the reflections, the spaces I thought were mine. It knew my name. It knew my routines. And it was patient. That night, I woke to the softest sound, my own voice whispering from the shadows. "Ayan, come with me." I stared into the darkness, paralyzed. The figure stepped forward. Not fully solid, not fully gone, just enough to make my blood run cold. My stalker had made contact, and I understood with a sickening certainty that it wasn't waiting for me to leave. It was waiting for me to notice, Sleep had become a distant memory. Every sound made my body tense. Even in the daytime, the shadows seemed alive, stretching unnaturally, creeping closer to me. I started locking every door and window, but it didn't matter. I could feel it. Always just behind me. Always waiting. One afternoon, I returned from the grocery store to find my apartment exactly as I left it, or so I thought. On my coffee table lay a single note, written in a shaky, uneven hand. I see you, always watching. You cannot hide. I dropped the bag of groceries. My hands trembled. No one could have entered. The doors were locked. The building was nearly empty. That night, I set up my laptop camera to record. Maybe I could catch it. Maybe I could finally see the intruder in the act. I placed it facing the living room and went to bed, leaving the lights on. At 1:47 a.m., the camera recorded movement. Shadows pooled in the corners, stretching and warping. And then, slowly, impossibly, a figure appeared. It wasn't human. Not fully. Darker than night, taller than a man. It glided across the floor without touching it, its face a blur of darkness. And it whispered my name. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. Then the most terrifying thing happened. The figure split. More of them appeared, dozens of shadowy forms, all whispering my name, crawling along walls, ceiling, and floor like a living web. I could feel their cold intent pressing against me. I ran to the bathroom, slamming the door. But in the mirror, I didn't see my reflection. I saw them. Hundreds of faces, all distorted, all smiling at me with mouths too wide, eyes too deep, voices blending into a horrid chorus. We're always here, always watching, waiting for you. I backed away, bumping into the counter. One shadow reached through the glass, cold, solid, and whispered into my ear, "You're ours now." I fled into the kitchen, grabbing a knife for some sense of control. But even with it, I felt powerless. My apartment, my sanctuary, had been transformed into a trap. Every corner hid them. Every flicker of light betrayed a presence I couldn't escape. By the third night, paranoia consumed me. I barely ate, barely slept. Every creak in the floor, every groan of the building became a threat. The shadows didn't just follow me. They anticipated me. They knew when I would look away, when I would blink, when I would take a step. I started seeing them in reflections everywhere, even on the street through shop windows, even in the sunlight glinting off cars. And always their eyes, black, endless, watching. One evening I decided I had to confront it. I couldn't live like this, a prisoner of a presence I couldn't see fully. I screamed into the empty room, demanding, "Who are you? What do you want?" The response was immediate, a chorus of whispers overlapping. "You, we, yours." And then I saw it, not just a shadow anymore, a figure, standing at the end of my hallway. Tall, dark, featureless, yet horrifyingly human in form. And it wasn't alone. Behind it, dozens more, each whispering my name, each inching closer. I backed into the wall, knife raised, heart pounding, but the walls themselves seemed to pulse, breathing with their intent. There was nowhere to go, no escape. I realized then, the stalker had never been confined to one space. It had learned my habits, my fears. It had adapted. And now, it was here, in me. The last thing I remember that night was it stepping closer, closer, until the cold darkness swallowed everything. I woke up to silence. The apartment was still, but something in the air made my skin crawl. My phone lay on the floor, the cracked screen blinking a notification I hadn't seen before. It was a message from an unknown number. "Did you sleep well? I've been watching." My heart froze. I had tried to convince myself that the shadowy figure was just paranoia, a product of too many late nights alone. But now, the proof was here, glaring at me through my own phone. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed to flee, but I had nowhere to go. The doors and windows all seemed wrong, slightly shifted. as if the apartment itself had warped overnight. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not the careful, tentative steps from the hallway, but deliberate, heavy, slow steps. Each one reverberated through the floor, through my bones. I crept toward my bedroom door, every nerve alert. But the hallway outside was empty. Empty, yet I could feel eyes. Thousands of them, staring, waiting. My shadow stretched unnaturally along the walls, twisting, elongating. And then, a whisper, low, like gravel scraping across a microphone. "I've never left." I stumbled back, hitting the wall. My reflection in the broken mirror looked wrong. Not just tired, wrong. The eyes staring back were mine, but the grin, the twisted, cruel grin, it wasn't. I ran to the kitchen, flipping the lights on and off. Shadows flickered violently, mocking me. Drawers slammed open on their own. Every sound in the apartment now belonged to something unseen. And I realized it wasn't stalking me from outside anymore. It had entered me. My phone buzzed again. "Look behind you." I whipped around. Nothing. But then a cold hand brushed my shoulder. I spun, heart hammering, but empty air. My breathing grew ragged. I could feel it, inside my chest, inside my mind. Watching. Smiling. Waiting. I grabbed a knife from the drawer, clutching it with shaking hands. Every reflection, every shadow, every flicker of light seemed to hold it. And I knew, if I stayed, it would take me. Not just my body, but my mind, my soul, my very existence. I bolted for the door. As I fumbled with the lock, I heard the final whisper, soft, chilling, permanent. "You can't leave. We've always been here. And now, so are you." The door swung open, but the hallway stretched impossibly long. I ran, but the walls closed in. I screamed, but no sound came out. My own apartment had become the cage, and in the darkness, the shadow moved closer, grinning, whispering my name. Over and over. I realized then, the stalker was never outside. It had always been me. Or at least, the version of me that it had claimed. The part that lived in fear, in guilt, in paranoia. And as the last bit of light faded, I felt it smile. From inside my own skin. By morning, the neighbors noticed my apartment door wide open. Nothing else seemed wrong. No sound, no sign of struggle. Just my phone lying on the floor, screen cracked with a single new message. "See you tonight." And that was the last anyone ever saw of me.